today we'll start in Genesis chapter 11, starting in verse 27. This is the account of Terah. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran became the father of Lot. While his father Terah was still alive, Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, in the land of his birth. Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. She was the daughter of Haran, the father of both Milcah and Ishkah. Now Sarai was barren, and she had no children. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram. And together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years, and he died in Haran. The Lord had said to Abram, "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. All the peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram left as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old. When he set out from Haran, he was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all his possessions they had accumulated, and all the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Abram traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Moreh at Shechem. At that time the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he went on toward the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Then Abraham set out and continued toward Negev. Here we are in a day and age with cell phones and iPods and laptops, and we can connect with people instantly from the United States here in Rockford, Illinois to Hong Kong in an instant with the press of a button. And we live in a world where we can get in cars and we can travel long distances in short amounts of time. We live in a day and age where the old way of doing things has been radically altered in the last 30 years. And why is it that we as Christians, why would we go back? Why go back to the time of Abram? Has not Christ come? Has he not given us a new covenant? Why should we go and look back at the life of Abram? It was so long ago, it seems almost irrelevant. That now that we have a mindset that sometimes, we've got Jesus and we don't need to look back. And yet, as we think about the covenant that established through Jesus, we need to go back to the start of an initial covenant between God and mankind about bringing salvation and reconciliation of mankind to himself. In the process of God reconciling mankind, reconciling you and reconciling me to mankind through a covenant relationship, begins with Abram. Notice it's not Abraham, now it's still Abram. He, like many others, like Simon, is turned to Peter. Abraham will later be turned to Abraham. And Abraham is one of the most important figures that we can study. If you look at Hebrews chapter 11, one of these great calls of faith, one of the great chapters of faith, where specific points of faith are called out by God and there's credit to them as righteousness. 31 verses of specific references of great faith throughout the Old Testament. And 11 of those verses belong to Abraham. 11 of 31 specific references of great faith in Hebrews 11. 11 of them, 1/3, belong to Abraham. If you look at James chapter 2, verse 23, it says, Abram was a friend of God. Abraham was a friend of God. This guy was not just some guy in the past. He was a friend of God. If you want to understand what it means to be God's friend, and if you want to be God's friend, we must look at those who God has called his friend and study them and see how their lives were transformed, how God used them, how God promised them things. And so we come to the text here. And starting in verse 27 of Genesis 11, we get a brief history, a genealogy, the setup for the story. Here is Terah, the father of Abraham, living in the land of Ur. And there's the reference, and his wife was Sarai, and she was barren. And from the land of Ur, God calls Sarah, Abraham, Lot, Terah. He calls them away. And what is important to understand is that in this time period, you're looking at Abram without children and now leaving the land of his father. The two things that people would look for were land and children and offspring. And now Abraham has none of that. And then we come... So there is the setup to the story, and now we get to the beginning of the story. Chapter 12, verse 1 of Genesis. Then the Lord had said to Abram. Here's Abram, this guy leaves the land of his father because the Lord had said to Abram. When we talk about listening to God speak, we talk about reading his word. We read God's word and God speaks to us, and that is true. But Abraham does not have God's written word. Moses, who is credited with writing the Pentateuch, is going to come years and years and years down the line. But here God speaks. God had said to Abram. Here's an important thing for us to understand. That we have a speaking God. That our God is not silent. That our God does not sit back and try and make us figure it out for ourselves. We have a God that speaks. Our God speaks to us. And in the story of Abraham, God said to Abram. We always spend time trying to figure out what God's doing. And it's like a puzzle, a Rubik's Cube. We're trying to figure it out. And all we have to do is listen to the voice of God because God speaks. Ladies and gentlemen, an important thing to understand about this text, not about Abram, but about God, is that our God is a speaking God. He is the same God yesterday, today, and forever. He is unchanging. So, in as much as the circumstances of our world have changed over the last millennia, our God has not changed. Our God is still a speaking God. God had said to Abram. What a great promise that we have a speaking God.